Good evening, everybody. This is a special day, okay? And the reason why this is a special day, it's really a number of things. First, believe it or not, this is session number 60. 60. Unbelievable that we've been doing this now for 5 years and we're in session number 60. That's just incredible. Hannah, you should know that we started these just about 5 years ago when we had the COVID lockdown. Okay, that's pretty much when we started these. Eric and I needed to do something to keep our sanity and maintain our community. And we came up with this idea, which has worked just beautifully. We've been having a lot of fun. So that's the first reason why it's special. This is session number 60. Uh, Second reason why this is special, actually, there are three reasons. Second reason this is special, this is International Whiskey Day. Okay, that's a big deal also. So, International Whiskey Day, and we're having a tasting. And the third reason is because one thing that Eric and I love doing in these sessions is introducing people to whiskeys that they may not know. Okay. And tonight we've got a Danish whiskey. Okay. And I am very excited about this. And it's a great line of whiskeys. I am thrilled that you were here tonight. Can you please say hello and tell us where you're calling in from tonight and what your role is with Stauning?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Happy International Whiskey Day. Thanks for joining me. I'm happy to be here. My name's Hannah. I've been with Stauning Whiskey for 3 years as their U.S. market manager. I'm based in Chicago currently, but when I started with Stauning, I was based in New York. Originally from Denver, Colorado, relocated to New York City to launch the brand in the U.S. And then when we started doing consumer research, we found out that Chicago and Illinois as a whole is a great place to grow brands because people are curious. People, embrace design, architecture, culinary, great whiskey, all of the above. I relocated from New York to Chicago to represent Stauning here. So
Oh, that's
that's
wonderful.
a
And
little bit on
and
me. Yeah.
and where were you before? What roles do you have in the industry before Stowning? Because you,
Yeah.
you you just said that you were the person who was launching it. That means that you must have had some sort of a pedigree before that.
Yeah, I mean, I found Stauning through a recruiter because of my time. Previously, I was a VP of wholesale and marketing for 291 Colorado Whiskey. So,
Oh, okay.
craft distillery out of Colorado Springs. Yeah, so I helped 291 grow into 15 plus markets. And obviously I was friends with the brand prior. But before that, I was in distribution. So I've been on the distribution side working for Moët Hennessy products and Diageo brands in Denver, focusing on on-premise and growing restaurants and bars and presence there. And then prior to that, I was managing restaurants. So I've been in hospitality for the past 10 years. I've been in spirits for seven. And of that seven, it's been five, specifically in whiskey, which is really amazing. So both craft and then now a really great whiskey category of the European rye sector. So
Oh, that's great. I,
yeah.
I I can imagine there was a big culture shock for you moving from Colorado to Manhattan.
Yes, it was. Honestly, though, it was so fantastic. It was exactly what I needed. I was born and raised in Denver, and I think it was the timing aligned perfectly. Midtown and Denver have nothing in common. I think that's a good thing. Yeah. So it was
Yeah.
good. Yeah, it
I
was
mean, you
great.
got a really big park in Midtown, at least, you
Yes,
know.
there's a little bit of outdoors.
Yes.
Not much sky or mountains or fresh
Yeah.
air, but you know what? I embraced it, and I really loved my time in New York. But Chicago has welcomed me just as well. So
Great. And
yeah.
how long have you been here in Chicago?
I'm going on a year, so I moved here May of last year.
Got it.
Yeah, and so over the past year, it's been really, really hyper local strategic
Right.
focus for Stowning, and then branching out in other parts of the Midwest as well.
Yeah. But it's funny because you and I have ran into each other several times already.
Oh
So
yes, I know. See, so I'm all over the place. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah, it's the
The
whiskey.
the
Well,
whiskey, yeah, whiskey doesn't sell itself. People got to
yeah.
try it to fall in love with it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you're also very correct about Chicago. Those of us, by the way, not everybody on here is in Chicago right now. Most of
Okay,
us are,
great.
but there are some people from other parts of the world. We have Philadelphia, we have Tennessee, sometimes we have Boston, we have Naperville. That's a different issue completely.
So
Um,
I've heard.
yeah, but you're right. Those of us in Chicagoland, and yes, that includes Naperville. Sorry, Ariel. Uh, We are very fortunate. We can get just about anything here, and people in other parts of the country are not that fortunate. And we are really blessed with stores like, Warehouse and Binny's and things like that, and all the great local stores that bring in whiskeys like yours,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know.
That are willing to take a chance on a new brand. And we launched here in, not to get too far ahead of myself, but Chicago specifically, we launched here in October of 2023. And within 3 months, we were already in, 26 Binny's locations and, 15 independents and on cocktail menus. So really the liquid, and I hopefully everyone agrees with me, the liquid speaks for itself, and that makes my job really easy. You know what I mean? So
No, that's wonderful.
yeah.
I'd like us to get into the liquid in a minute. By the way, anybody who wants to start drinking, of course, you can do so. You don't have to wait here. A few things I just want to point out just about Stauning. First, I love your website.
Oh, thank
Okay.
you.
Your website, those of you know who have an opportunity afterwards, or before, the Stauning website's incredible. For each of the whiskeys, it really gives good detail. And, for those of us here who geek out on this stuff, it's very, very exciting to be able to do that. Okay. And, to go to a website that has such great information. Um, so let's talk about your grains. From what I understand, all of your grains, you're trying to use grains that are as local as possible. It sounds like
hmm
terroir is a really big deal for Stauning,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, it is. So, the distillery is in the town of Stauning on the west coast of Denmark. So, 45-minute flight from Copenhagen, the, exact, point opposite of, of Copenhagen, opposite side. Terroir is huge for us because it's rugged waters. It's the weather that changes every 15 minutes. It's windswept trees that are permanently windswept. All of this makes a huge difference, and obviously the grain that we're using and how we're maturing our whiskey. So we use a grain that's sourced locally from the same farmers that we've worked with for the past 10 years, 20 kilometers away from the distillery. So as the Danes say, it's a bicycle ride away. And the whiskey the grains that you'll be tasting this evening are rye and barley. So rye being very, very, very culturally relevant to the Danes. They eat rye
Mhm.
bread with every meal.
Yeah,
So, rye, although gets a little tricky when the soil is sandy, it's not great for growing, but it's great for maturing. And we share the same latitude as Edinburgh, Scotland as well. So, as you can imagine, the weather changes every 15 minutes, like I said. So,
right.
really unexpected journey for Stauning whiskey. That is, but for our founders to set out and to recognize the terroir, that's kind of what brings you the liquid today.
Okay.
Hmm
So people are already starting to drink, and, and,
I
and
love
I
it.
encourage them to do so. And I'm loving the rye already, but of course, I've tasted all of your stuff before, but I
Yes.
really love this rye. So let's talk mash bill.
Sure.
Okay. So if you can please tell us about the actual mash bill in the Stauning rye.
Yeah. So, for those who haven't seen the package yet, I know that it was poured down, so I wanted to show you the bottles. So this is our Stauning Rye. It's the yellow label here. Beautiful bottle design. The gold etching tells the whole story of Stauning, which we'll get into. But what you're drinking right now is 70% floor malted rye, 30% floor malted barley, matured in New American oak for 4 years at
Okay.
48%.
I'd like you to
Yeah.
slow down and repeat that because we
hmm
have people who really want to hear that stuff.
Sure.
Okay. So
Yeah.
can you please repeat what you just said?
Yep. So what you're drinking is 70% floor malted rye,
Mm-hmm.
30% floor malted barley,
Mm-hmm.
matured in New American oak for 4 years at
Okay.
48%.
Beautiful. Okay.
hmm
So 70 malted rye, 30 malted barley, and the barley is like the rye, it's also locally sourced, correct?
Correct.
Is it also a bike ride away?
Yep. Yep. They're the same farmers we've been working with for the past 10 years. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. But by the way, I love rye bread. My grandparents had a kosher bakery in Philadelphia growing up, and we had some of the best rye bread around. And I love rye. I probably have more bottles of rye than anything else on my shelves. So that's one of the other reasons why I'm excited about tonight. I'm just geeking
Yeah,
about this stuff.
absolutely. And what's really interesting too, for me career-wise, I've only worked with rye whiskey. So, pretty nuts.
That is unique in the
Yeah,
industry. That
it
is
is.
very unique in this industry,
Yeah,
especially
and
here in the States, because there's so much of other stuff.
Yeah, and rye is also, I'm sure we can all agree on this call, rye tends to be a polarizing category. Not everybody loves rye. They either love rye, they hate rye, they have different opinions about rye. American rye is stark contrast to probably what you're sipping on now, in my opinion. And that is because we floor malt our grain. So that kind of brings us into the production process. But floor malting, I'm sure that we're all familiar, but we steep and turn the grain, measuring temperature and moisture for 7 days to get the grain to sprout slightly and create residual sugar in the grain that by when distillation happens creates this refinement on the palate, softer, sweeter notes than you would find in American rye.
Got it. And the turning of the rye on that floor, I
Hmm.
assume that it is with machines and not people getting the monkey shoulder, right?
Correct. Yes. So being a part of a Danish organization, the Danes are very innovative. So noticing that, monkey shoulder is very prominent when it's manual labor, we invented a spindle, if you will, that steeps and turns the grain at the same time. So,
So
yes.
how big? So you do your own malting. That's pretty unique in
It
the
is.
whiskey world because so many people source the malted grains. Okay, so they source the malt. So how big is your space there? Because obviously a malting floor needs to be quite big. Well, depending on what your volume is, right? But can you describe like how big the actual malting floor is?
Yeah, sure. It's about I would say it's a third of a football field. So, and I have
Wow.
I have images. I've got a deck that I can share. It depends on how, I like the conversation. I'm more
Yeah.
conversational, but if you want me to
Yeah.
show pictures, I'm happy to.
Yeah, we
Um,
might do that later. Let's do
sure.
conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
Conversation's good.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's about a third of a football field, and we have two floors that are separate from each other, that are one's, malting barley, one's malting rye.
Are is the malting floor is the building in which it's done is it temperature controlled, I presume?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Mhm.
But where you're aging stuff, that's not temperature controlled, right?
It is to a certain extent because Denmark remains, cooler temperatures almost all year round.
Yeah.
So to get the maturation you're looking for, it is mildly temperature controlled. Yes.
Oh, okay. Curious. That's
Hmm.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's and the other thing that I saw on the website that it was the company was started by like a bunch of friends, right?
Yes, so nine friends, all of varying professions, none of which had distillation experience prior, which I don't really like to tout that because they're amazing and our whiskey's amazing. You would never know. But yes, we had four engineers, a chef, a butcher, a doctor, a teacher, and a helicopter pilot. It kind of sounds like a joke, like they all walk into a bar and
It
something
does.
happens.
I was just gonna say
Um,
it sounded like a joke.
Yes, no, no, not a joke, but the doctor of the group, his name's Martin. He is our main founder. Was listening to a podcast one day, and on the podcast it said it's really easy to make whiskey, but very challenging to make good whiskey. And so he kind of rallied his friends and brothers. So three of our founders are brothers.
Yeah.
And they, asked them, hey, you wanna start making whiskey? What do you think about using all this grain that we have around instead of starting a bakery like most Danes? Let's start a distillery.
No, that's wonderful. I love it.
Hmm.
Hey, by the way, I've got to tell you that the 4 year aging, the wood is really coming through. It's
Hmm.
like I definitely it's not, and in a good way. This is it's lovely, it's mellow, it's not like, one of those peppery, spicy types of ryes. It's nice and sweet. Of course, a lot of the sweetness, I'm sure, also comes from the malted barley, but your malting process, I can definitely see how the sugars have come out. That there's a good sweetness in here. Yeah, this is delicious. Absolutely
Thank you.
delicious.
I'm so
Yeah.
glad. We all have
Yeah.
our own tasting notes, and obviously I'm always curious, but we like to refer to this as liquid rye bread to some extent, but it also depends on
Hmm.
the time that I drink it and obviously what I've eaten that day, et cetera, et cetera. But they're really, really pretty, citrus notes, cacao notes. It's not that really robust nature of an American rye. And that's kind of the contrast that I offer, and it,
Right.
it it does so well in cocktails. I mean, all of us on this call obviously appreciate whiskey neat on the rocks, but if you wanted to put this rye in a cocktail, it would also stand up in a cocktail because of some of the similar rye characteristics it has. So,
Okay, so you and I are sort of on the same wavelength right now
mhm.
because I was just about to ask you what cocktails you enjoy to
Yeah.
make with this whiskey.
So it's really interesting, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, but when we taste the chaos, One of my favorites is a split base Manhattan with the rye and the chaos because I really, if I'm gonna have a cocktail, it's usually just one. Otherwise, I'll drink it neat. And if I'm gonna have a cocktail and it's a whiskey cocktail, I want something that's like really round and robust. And I really love Manhattans and black Manhattans. So
Okay.
split base between the rye and the chaos. But
Nice.
this is also a summertime sipping whiskey. I remember when the recruiter called me to work for Stauning, and I said, you know what, I got to try the whiskey first. No one, I'm not someone that can sell something I don't believe in. So they sent me bottles, and on first, first sip, second sip of this rye, I was like, oh my gosh, I can totally sell this whiskey. And then I tried it in a highball, and I tried it, and so the application of this rye is really unique because of the refinement and the finesse on the palate. You can pretty much build any cocktail to your desire, but highball and Manhattans are my favorite.
Got it. Love it.
Hmm
So let's talk just briefly before we go into the next whiskey. So the source of your wood, the oak. Okay, so
hmm
most of it is American oak, is that correct? American white oak?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, beautiful.
And
Uh
we get it from good old friends in Kentucky.
Very nice.
Yes,
And so are you ever using ex-bourbon?
we
Okay.
are. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So
All
in the
right.
second whiskey in the Chaos we'll try.
Okay.
There's a touch of ex bourbon in that.
All right.
Hmm
Chaos, spelled Kaos.
Yes. Would you
Chaos.
like to hear the story of where that
I
name came
would
from?
love to hear the story
Okay.
and also tell us about the whiskey too.
Perfect. So now I have a captive audience and I can tell you the story. I don't usually use it as a selling tool because it's kind of far off. So bear with me. Chaos comes from it's a nudge, it's a joke at Danish politics, if you will. So back in the 40s, there was someone that was running for office, and essentially his slogan, his propaganda was vote Stauning or get chaos. And he wound up winning and all of this stuff, and the election was great. And so this is kind of like a local nudge to politics from our founders. And the Danes tend to be pretty funny, very tongue in cheek about everything. So that's actually where this name comes from, is from local politics in Denmark from the 1940s.
Got it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the
Yeah.
history that you guys are trying to like infuse into the brand. I
Yeah.
like that. That's fun history. So this is I read the description and I want to read this to everybody, but then I want you to explain it.
hmm
Okay. So from your website it says, and I quote, a marriage of rye, single malt, and heather and peat smoked single malt. Okay, so let me make sure I get this. This has rye, this has single malt, and then it has smoked single malt. But the smoked single malt is smoked with both heather and peat. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, you nailed it. You're hired. It sounds
Huh.
a little chaotic when you're reading it, doesn't it? No.
Chaos. It sounds chaotic. Very
Yeah,
nice.
no, no.
I've
But
never had a heather smoked whiskey. Can you why heather? Is it just because you have it there and you wanted to try it?
well, Denmark, the Danes and Stauning in general, we focus a lot on sustainability. Heather is grown abundantly in the fields of Denmark, and so instead of digging up peat constantly and only smoking with peat, we actually split that with the majority of it being heather because it's easily accessible, and it's more sustainable than using the peat. And peat in Denmark is highly, highly regulated. We're one of the only distilleries that's been approved to use Danish peat, and our Danish peat is sourced from way up north on top part of an island. But so that's number one reason is actually for sustainability purposes. And then the number two reason is that after they tried it, they're like, oh, this is actually pretty good. So yeah, so we smoke with Danish peat and Danish heather. You'll see it in the fields when you're driving. Mhm.
So Denmark, you said, because you did mention that Denmark is pretty much the same latitude as Edinburgh, as Scotland is. Okay, so you have peat, so you have peat bogs there as well, is what you're
Yes.
saying.
Top,
Okay,
very, very northern part of Denmark, predominantly made up of 3,000-year-old trees.
got it.
Yeah.
And all of the grain in here, this is all malted, right? It's malted rye and
hmm
malted barley, correct?
Yep. So all of yeah,
Okay.
all of the SKUs that we'll taste, everything's 100% floor malted. We do that in-house. And so what you have here to kind of break it down metrics wise is 50% is still malted rye.
Okay.
25% is unpeated malted barley, and the other
Okay, so hold on. So
25%
55%. So 50% is malted rye.
mhm,
All right, the next thing.
is 25%
Uh-huh.
malted but unpeated barley.
Malted, unpeated barley, and then 25 smoked barley.
Correct. Still malted and then peated
Smoked,
barley. Yeah.
malted barley. And the
Hmm.
barley, as I mentioned before, is smoked with both heather and peat.
That's correct.
I gotta thought there's a little bit of like mad scientist going into this one.
We love
The
that.
creativity, really, it's like 'cause, again, when I read it, I'm like, that's a crazy mix of things. So how much experimentation is going on to result in something like this? Because this is freaking delicious.
Tons of experimentation. I mean, when my founder started making whiskey, they started in a butcher shop in the town of Stauning, right? So like that's experimentation at its finest. Using the meat grinder to mill the grain, where they would floor malt would be where they were like, hanging the meat and drying the meat. I mean, they used this very, very small footprint of a space to distill, and then they also built their first small, essentially a model of an Olympic, Portuguese still. So that is where the experimentation started in 2005, and then they kind of just they set out to make an Ardbeg. I mean, let's be real. I'll tell you the truth. They loved Ardbeg. They tried Ardbeg. They're like, we want to make a whiskey that tastes like this, you know, and that's where the peat kind of came in. And then, using rye is what they had on hand and what grows, but what grows abundantly. And then heather is what is really natural and sustainable. So I think all of the pieces kind of came together in that way. But we also have over 100 live experiments in the distillery at any given time with a ton of finished whiskey.
Okay.
So,
And
yeah.
there's no longer any butcher shop stuff going on, right?
There is no butcher shop stuff going on, no. But yeah, it's a really beautiful story, and it's a super cool place. It was very fun to go and check it out where they started, and then from the butcher shop, they started having people
Okay.
try the whiskey, and no one went blind,
But
and
but by
built
the way,
from
there's a
there.
backstory to my question there because
Yeah,
a lot
please.
of the people on here are Jewish and a whole bunch of people on here are kosher. And one of the more recent tastings that we had was with High Wire Distilling, Jimmy Red from the
Oh, that's right.
Carolinas, and they have the
Yeah.
Benton's ham smoked,
Yes. Yes, they do. No, 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 no.
and it
There's
caused a
no.
whole big brouhaha with our group. And as soon as you just mentioned that, I was like, uh-oh,
No, don't worry. There is no butcher shop activity anymore.
No, that's good. Thank God, because people were gonna like throw tomatoes at me through the computer. So, phew, thank you very much, Anna.
Yes,
I
you're
appreciate
in the
that.
clear. You're in the clear.
People love this. Okay.
Hmm.
So talk about so the age on this and the fermentation. How old is this thing, and is it the same malting process? On the floor and all that stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, so same malting process. This one will be around 4 years old as well. So same age statement, matured in New American oak, and then finished in second fill bourbon and Madeira casks. So like not
Madeira,
as if it's not,
nice.
complicated enough. We mature it for 4 years and then loosely finish it between 6 to 8 months in the second fill bourbon and Madeira.
Okay. So all of your are all of your spirits at least 4 years old?
Yes. Hmm.
Okay, got it. And the Madeira casks, you get them directly from the source?
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
got it. And do you reuse the casks, things like the Madeira casks? Okay,
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
nice.
Like I kind of owed to the sustainability. And then when my founder started making whiskey, they wanted to just, I mean, honestly, you would walk through our warehouses and there's just tons of whiskey finishing in really unique casks because they wanted to experiment. Although we make whiskey really traditionally, right? Using the floor
Hmm.
malting process, direct fire, what have you, and then but still want to experiment and innovate, which is pretty great.
Yeah, this is delicious.
Thank
Absolutely
you.
delicious. By the way, how much does this sell for at Benny's? Do you know?
That one will be 79.99.
Okay. Yeah, because the rye I think was 59.99 is what somebody put up before. So I want to be
Yes,
sure
that's
about that.
correct. Yeah.
No, this is delicious. No, this is great. By the way, are there other Danish whiskey brands that are, available here? Like, well, what are the other ones that you know of? Just curious.
Danish whiskey brands here, no. Like it's pronounced two. I think it's THY is not available in the States yet, but
Okay.
forgive me, 14, 19, can't remember, 14 or 19 different distilleries in Denmark now, but we were the first purpose-built distillery, meaning we did not make aquavit beforehand, we didn't make schnapps beforehand, we didn't make
Mm.
anything else. When the founders started, when we started with whiskey, which is really unique.
Got it. Very nice. By the way, I can already tell you're going to get a good number of questions when we go to the questions and answers. People are
Sure.
geeking out on this stuff. They're really enjoying this. This
Great.
is
Great.
wonderful. Um, and so the last one that we have here is the smoked. Okay, so
Yes,
Stauning smoke single malt. Okay, so this one, I presume, since it's a single malt on the bottle, this is 100% malted barley, correct?
that's correct.
Okay. 100% malted barley. Now, is this also heather and peat, or is it just peat?
It's Heather and Pete. Yep.
Heather and peat.
hmm
By the way, can you tell that the heather, is it, are you using like the heather wood and also the leaves and everything, like and the
Yeah, so it's
bark,
every it's super unique. Like we the our smoker is really small, super small footprint. And so when you open it up and you look in it, you got like peat, you got like peat gravel, you've got heather. Everything's just kind of thrown in there as if you're kindling a fire, really. And so the heather itself like lends itself to such a different you I mean, hopefully, I mean, we'll see if everyone agrees, but different style of smoke. So you're not going to get the astringency, the petrol, the Band-Aid, the fun stuff that you get from Isla Scotch. You're gonna get more of like a wispy smoke, in my opinion. This is definitely more of like a woody style smoke, cherry wood,
Hmm.
mesquite, something like I mean you touched on barbecue earlier, Gil. This would be great for something like that. So yeah, it's complete
So
difference.
one thing that you don't know is that Eric and I and a few other people who are on here, including Eric and Rona and Daniel Pikus, we all compete in kosher barbecue competitions.
That's amazing.
Okay. And one of the funny things is that at these competitions, like there's always like this unofficial competition of who brings the best whiskey. You know,
Well,
and
who
that
pairs the best whiskey?
that's always a whole big side thing. And one year I was really pissed because I brought Elijah Craig 18, which is a damn good whiskey, and I was really happy that I brought it. And I was pretty sure nobody else would have anything better there. And God damn it, somebody had Elijah Craig 21. I was like,
Oh no,
damn it.
not
Yeah,
by
I know.
3 years.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. Damn it, you know.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, when I nosed this, I got cherry wood. There was something about it, it's like there's and because I use a lot of cherry wood when I smoke, especially my beef ribs, and I'm definitely getting something like that here. So you're right, this would really match up well,
Yeah. Oh my
okay,
gosh, it
with
does so
that.
well. Yeah, it does so well. And like cooking with it, I mean, honestly, put this in a barbecue sauce. It's like my dream.
Yeah. Have
Yeah.
you ever made a barbecue sauce with this?
I have not, because I am not a chef. I like to
Ah.
watch. I closely observe while drinking whiskey and then food is prepared for me and then I eat it graciously. Like that's kind of how it works.
I love that we have in the comments here. Is anyone else salivating at all this barbecue talk?
Why, yes.
Yes, yes. By the way, I don't know if you know, but we have at least one professional on the call here, Michael and Aaron. Aaron is Aaron Lee, who is, I believe, master distiller at Few now. So,
Amazing. I
so I
love
don't know if you
that.
know Erin. So she's on the call. And hi, Erin. Wave, Erin. Erin, wave to us. Wave. I see Erin's waving right there. Yes, Mike, you can wave too. I mean, you can wave.
Oh, no, no, I don't do the waving. She's the waver.
Okay, fine.
Nice to have you both. Nice to have you both.
That's beautiful. So let's talk a little bit more about this. So, how long is the grain actually smoked here? Because as you know, that's a big deal in the whiskey world. How long something is being exposed to the smoke.
Yeah, yeah, it's about 12 hours tops.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a
12
very,
hours.
very quick process. And we only do the smoke once every, well, I guess it depends on production, so we won't get into that. But when I first started, they were only doing smoke like once a year. We were getting all the smoke done in like one fell swoop.
Well, that makes sense. You're a smaller
Yeah,
distillery and you have to
right.
clean this stuff really well afterwards. So, get it over with, do your run, get your bottles and your barrels going for the next few years.
hmm
Yeah, that makes sense. What does this run for at Binny's?
The smoke is 89.99.
And is that currently on the shelves? Do we currently have
Yeah, yeah,
inventory of that
yeah.
in Chicago?
Yes. Oh, yeah. You absolutely have inventory of that in Chicago. Depending on the various Binny's locations, we've got like our top six that carry everything. But yeah, it's on the shelf.
Okay.
And so,
So a few people have joined us, by the way, from other parts of the country. We have somebody from St. Louis, somebody from Tennessee. We have some people from Philadelphia. We have Massachusetts. In what states is Stauning available?
Predominantly our focus markets are more readily available are in New York and Illinois. We
Okay.
just launched in Minnesota. California has it via e-com and some select retailers. But that is it. So really online would be the best case for some of the states that it's not, in brick and mortar.
Which online, marketplaces
So
carry
if
Stauning?
you can order from our website, we have fulfillment to at least 48 states through our e-commerce partner.
Oh, that's great. All right. So all of you who are out of who are not here in Chicagoland, you can order directly from their website. Okay, that's good to know. No, this is no, this is a lovely whiskey. So I actually did I did a tasting last year, and the theme of the tasting was smoke from strange places.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
so it's like I was doing smoked whiskeys, like that were from anywhere except for Isla, essentially, And I did not know about this one then, and if I do that session again, I will absolutely use this one. Maybe even both this and the Chaos because they both have such unique smoke flavors.
Well, yeah,
So
and since you're smoking with, I mean, you're smoking with Danish peat and Danish heather with both of them. Their stark level, like they're in contrast, they're contrasting levels of smoke because Chaos still has 50% rye. That is my argument. The reason that Chaos sometimes comes up to be more smoky, a lot of depth, a lot of character, is because you're still having rye grain in the liquid. And
right.
then you move over to smoke, it's 100% barley, obviously softer. This one's unique in the sense of it's matured for 5 to 7 years. So smoke is slightly
Mm,
older than the other two.
yeah.
And then when we finish it in rum casks and Calvados barrels. So if you're getting kind of like the funky
Ah,
notes from this or the agricole kind of notes from this, it's the secondary finish, using rum and Calvados.
okay. So, well, actually, no, that explains to me also the sweetness too. There's an
Hmm.
added sweetness to it that I'm getting here. So that's probably for both the rum and the Calvados. There's something like ridiculously refreshing about this. It's very refreshing, but also it's got great legs. I mean, it's just this is a lovely whiskey. So I'm curious, back to our cocktails discussion. Do you use this in cocktails, and if so, which ones?
Okay, so it's really interesting. I'm a huge peat fan. I'm a huge smoky whiskey drinker. When I first tried this, I wanted to put it in a daiquiri. So I actually drink
Oh,
this in a daiquiri. It's a very expensive daiquiri. The first place that ever made it for me was Hawksmoor in New York. I remember I was living there, working there, and I went up to the bar and I said, "Hey, can you give me a smoked daiquiri?" And the bartender looked at me like I had four heads, and I was like, "No, no, no, just trust me." And he made me the cocktail and he strawed it and he was like, "Oh man." And he like grabbed all of the bar team. They're like, "You have to try this. You have to try this." So because of the peat and the smoke being so light and subtle, it's a really great introductory peated whiskey, right? If people are kind of peat curious, they don't know if they want to jump right in or not. It's a great starter whiskey, but it also plays really well in cocktails. So the high acid of the daiquiri, with the light peat and some of the funky agricole nature, it makes a stellar cocktail. So, I mean, obviously I'm biased, but yes, we put smoke in a cocktail.
yeah, that's great. So when you went to him to ask for that, did you have the Stauning smoke with you, or did you have him make that with whatever smoked whiskey he had
Oh
available?
no, they carried it already. It was already on the back bar.
Oh, it's already there.
Yes,
So you asked him to make it with your whiskey to see how
yes,
that is.
yes. Because I used to
Um,
drink Ardbeg 10 daiquiris like they were going out of style.
Hey,
So,
Ardbeg 10, anybody who likes smoked whiskey almost always has Ardbeg 10 on their shelf.
exactly.
Okay, I
Yep.
mean it is a it is a beautiful whiskey, and it is fairly reasonably priced. It is just a solid, great whiskey. I love Ardbeg 10. You know,
Yeah, me
that's
too. Me
incredible.
too.
No, this is lovely. Absolutely lovely. It's a little bit too drinkable. You know, I guess that's not a problem, or it is a problem depending on whether or not you have a meeting tomorrow morning.
Sure
Uh,
thing.
no, that's great. So, what I want to do right now is I want to open it up to questions. Eric, let's go to you first. And everybody, I want to remind you that you do have the ability to raise your hands. Okay, it's under the React in most of the Zoom platforms that you would see that it's under the React button. Okay, which is a heart. So you go to React and you can raise your hand there. Eric, if you could please let us know if you what questions you have for Hannah, please.
Yeah, so first of all, Hannah, nice to see you again. It
Good to
was
see
nice
you.
being up with you to get the bottles. Yeah, so these were great. I only actually one question. You said that they're doing a lot of experimentation. Do they have a peated rye product?
You guys aren't going to believe this, but last night at the World Whiskey Awards, Stauning won Best Single Cask for their smoked rye whiskey. Yeah.
Wow.
Hey!
And
So
we don't
pretty
have it, and
amazing.
we don't
No,
have it here.
no, not yet. But let me tell you, I mean, your
Mhm.
timing, Eric, couldn't have been better. But it will be introduced. I have a feeling, a strong feeling that if the trend is, if Europe likes it, we kind of start to toy with it here. Hopefully, if we can make enough of it, we will see something like that because really, smoked rye isn't that prominent, isn't that
No.
common. So I think that we could
No.
really take over a category using our rye whiskey. So.
Is that going to
Yeah,
hit the
that would be
States?
her.
I mean, are you planning to bring that to the States?
I wish I knew. I don't have that
Okay, you don't
answer
know.
for you.
Okay, all right.
I don't want to make
But
promises I can't keep.
yeah. Well, I mean, so for instance, like given the size of your distillery, how much of that was actually made? Like how many casks of that were laid down?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Wow. Industry secrets. I love it.
Yes. Yeah,
Love it.
or just secrets that I don't even have the answers to. So
Eric, what other
yeah.
questions do you have for Hannah?
No, that was it. Thank
Okay,
you.
great, wonderful. Okay, so all right, so we have several people whose hands are up. Looks like the first one is William Myers from St. Louis. Mr. Myers, please
Yes.
unmute. Nice to see you again, my friend.
Yes.
Oh,
Thank
you
you.
got a
And
tie. You got a tie
well,
going there.
yeah, I had something before this, and I also found some 291.
Oh, look at you. Look at
So
you. Obviously
yeah,
very different rye whiskeys, right?
they're high proof, 64.4 and 63.3, which I'm a junkie for the high proof. Don't water down my whiskey.
Yeah, exactly. Is one of them the Colorado whiskey by chance?
Um, one is Colorado whiskey and one's Colorado bourbon.
Yeah, so the Colorado whiskey is actually a rye whiskey. So that'll be
Okay.
not to stray too far, but that's a malted rye as well, but 291 did not malt all of their grains. So it's a German malted rye that they use, but I
Okay.
think you'll really enjoy that one.
It's finished with aspen stave,
It is, yeah. So
and then
whole story there.
the other one is bourbon whiskey finished with aspen wood staves for the
Yes.
wine and cheese place, Barrel Select, for a local retailer here in St. Louis, which we also do whiskey in the winter. So you
Nice.
should look
We
at that.
love that.
It's like Whiskey Fest, but smaller scale. Anyway, I digress. I love the fact that they have floor malting and direct fired stills. Do they also have worm tubs?
No.
No.
Mm-mm.
And then I was curious, what is the ABV that it comes off the still, and what's the ABV it gets put in the barrel at?
So between 60, oh boy, because I worked in production. So it's between 60, 64 and 65 off the still. And then 125 is it's not proofed down very much before it goes into the barrel. So pretty standard.
So like
So what
60, 62.5,
yeah,
kind of like the industry. Okay.
sorry, doing math.
No, no, no. So Scotch people do ABV, bourbon people do proof.
Yes, and I do a little bit of both because it's like I'm working in European like metrics and then also US metrics. So
Oh,
don't even
yeah.
get me
Don't
started
get
on
don't get me on
converting
metrics.
US
Right.
dollars. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. That's
Awesome.
great.
Thank you.
William, you only have one question? What's going on, buddy?
Well, I'll think of some more. I'm enjoying
Okay,
the
fine.
smoked.
Fine. Enjoy your whiskey.
You
We'll
know,
go
I
into
was
the other questions.
also I mentioned I had to double check because I this sounded familiar to me. For those who are in the Drammers group, there are two single barrels that Drammers did, a floor malted rye double oaked and a peated single malt. Um, they're both, I'm sure, cast strength. I know the first one's
Yeah,
57.
Michael and
I
Aaron
forget the
have
second one.
it.
Michael and
So,
Aaron have that bottle. Ah, love
and
it.
excellent labels, the artwork. I'm all about packaging, and so the artwork on those is killer. So the
Yeah,
cat
thank
and
you
the
so
wolf.
much. Yeah, so
Love it.
we call them we call them cats and dogs, and the label is actually designed by a famous tattoo artist who's related to the teacher of our founding group. She's a famous tattoo artist in Copenhagen. So all of our research labels and experimental labels, at the time, no longer moving forward, unfortunately, but at the time were designed by her.
Hopefully, someone has the original artwork on those.
I do.
Do you really?
Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah,
Do you really?
yeah. I mean, we've got computer. I mean, we've got scans of them. Yes, yeah, yeah.
No, no,
They've
no. Like
absolutely.
I have
Oh,
a
I'm
I
sure.
have a pen ink on paper like from Scotch Whiskey Society when they did their cartoons for the magazine.
Hmm.
So I like original artwork and paraphernalia. So
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm
Nice.
sure someone at the distillery has those. But that, if you get your
okay.
hands on those bottles, they're
Yes.
excellent.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Very good.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Myers. Let's see. So, Paul Barrett, if you could please unmute.
Yeah, Gil. So Michael, sorry, William asked more than one question because he asked my question. So now I have to pivot live here. He asked about the barrel entry, but I'm gonna have a pivot and ask about the stills. What kind of stills? Is it continuous or pot still? What's the line arm look like if it's pot still, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, they're pot still. Um, they're 2,000 liters. They're all small, so that's kind of what we actually haven't even talked about that, which is the most one of the most important parts of our production process. Thanks, Paul. But yeah, so we have 24 direct fire copper pot stills, so 16 wash stills, 8 stirping stills, all about 2,000 liter. We don't fill them up all the way, which obviously when you're using rye and malted rye in general, like that gets really complicated, right? With like I mean, I just heard horror stories of the messes that they'd had to clean out of those stills because like they were really going after the specific flavor profile that they achieved in the butcher shop. So they didn't want to pivot at all. So that's why there are 24 stills versus just doing 2 large ones. Really beautiful. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, our still room looks like a cathedral. It's stunning. Yeah.
And then, so I'm assuming double distillation
Yes. Yep. Mhm.
from wash into. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Wonderful. All right. Paul, do you have any other questions?
I'll leave it at that.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so I actually got here. So we have, oh, great. Michael and Aaron are raising their hands. If you can please unmute.
I don't know. I don't know if there is an answer, but is Danish oak a thing? Like I know Swedish
Um,
has been kind of a thing recently with Teeling and maybe a few others.
I don't have that answer, but it's something that I'd be keen to learn more about. I think if anyone were to hear about it, it would be me or someone on my team, right? So, I'm not really familiar. There aren't any. It kind of is a touch point, but there aren't any rules and regulations as to what makes Danish whiskey Danish yet. So Hans Martin, one of our founders, he's the teacher of the group. He's actually sitting on a board to help codify what that means. So whether they're using, you have to use Danish grain or you have to use potentially Danish oak, you have to use X local water source, you have to, you know what I mean? So they're trying to define that now. So I'd be very curious if that conversation comes about in the future when defining what Danish whiskey looks like. But to my knowledge, I have not heard much about Danish oak. Mm-mm.
I mean, the curiosity is real on that. I would just
Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe
you start to
I'll send a
wonder
couple
when you
notes.
yeah, when you've tasted so many things with so many different like wood from so many places, you're like,
I wonder what that would do. Yeah, and honestly, so true. So, no, maybe I'll ping my founders and see if I can't get us an answer.
awesome.
Yeah, that'd be great. And if you do, let me know because I can, definitely post it on our Facebook page and let people know and email that out.
Sure, no trouble.
No, that's great. But by the way, so the Drammers bottles, Aaron and Michael, you have the Drammers bottles of Stauning, is that correct?
We do.
Yes, no?
They're both here. That's the dogs. There's a cat's one too high out of reach for me to get.
Wow,
They're
that's
they're both
beautiful.
amazing. In their own right. That's a peated malt.
Single malt.
And then
Mhm.
there's the floor malted rye up there. Both pretty
Wow.
decent on the ABVs, like around 57, 58.
Hmm.
I mean, they're just killer bottles. I don't know if they're still available, but
Got it.
I-
Hannah,
so
that's
good
one
at
thing
what
that's
you
always fun about this group is you never know what somebody's going to pull off the shelf.
Oh, it makes me so happy every time I see that. I actually can't even tell you how many retailers I've went to in DC at some point, and they're like, "Look what I have," and I was like, "Oh, okay, well, nice to meet you." You know? Yeah. So I love it.
No, that's
Ooh,
awesome.
looks like Robert has a bottle of Bastard over there. I see that. Okay,
Robert, what you got there?
Stauning
Uh,
Bastard. So
Stauning Bastard. It's in a mescal cask.
Oh wow! Oh, is that one of the ones that was being poured tonight at Delilah's?
it
Yes.
is. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was because Hannah's cohort, colleague with Stauning was pouring that at Delilah's tonight. I think that Lynn was there. So Lynn, you tasted that tonight, right?
Yep,
Okay,
delicious. We
delicious.
also tasted Classico, which is, I think, the vermouth, Spanish vermouth.
Yes, that's correct. So both of those are a research series. They're also readily available in Binny's near retailers. Still going back to the rye narrative, very, very, important that we focus on rye, but the El Clasico is finished in Spanish vermouth casks for 6 months, and then the Bastard that Robert has is finished in mezcal barrels for 6 months. Both
Um,
very, very different.
but by the way, I have to point out that Mr. Myers is are already online and looking at things because he just posted in the chat that both of the Drammers bottles are still available for 89.99. Okay, so wow, that's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. So Hannah, one other question I have. So you were talking about the Danish marketplace that is not defined yet. What Danish whiskey the category actually is. What countries in the world are you available in right now?
Oh boy, long list. Okay. We are available in APAC region. We just actually launched last year. So Australia, Taiwan, China, South Korea, and Japan. Very
Okay,
cool. Very cool.
very cool.
Obviously available in the US, loosely available in Canada. And then so the UK is a huge market for us. Germany is actually a really huge market for us, which makes sense because the travel to the distillery. France, we just launched in the Netherlands, Hungary. Yeah,
Nice.
very large worldwide footprint.
No, it's great. It's
Mhm.
no, I gotta tell you, I'm enjoying this. This is great. Just so you know how these go now. So we're just about finished with the main part of the session here. Uh, I want to know if there's anything about Stauning that you wanted us to talk about tonight that we have not yet addressed.
Beautiful. No, honestly, I feel like we've addressed first and foremost, I think if we could take away one thing from this, is that Stauning is predominantly a refined rye whiskey made in Denmark, right? So when we launched in the US, we were like Danish whiskey, Danish whiskey, Danish whiskey. And then we did consumer research and then we started talking to whiskey drinkers. And really, it was really important that we honed in on our rye and that we make a rye whiskey and that it's culturally relevant. Right, that's point number one is that Stauning whiskey is a rye whiskey. Floor malted is obviously a huge part of that. Double distilled, direct fire, all of that. And then secondarily, there's a term in Denmark, in Danish called it's hygge. So Hue hyphen GAH. Hygge, which
Hmm.
means contentment, conviviality, coziness, this great deep feeling of like warmth and togetherness, community, if you will. And so really when I talk about sounding, it's less about what you're drinking and more about who you're drinking it with and the memories that you're making. And that is super, super, super important because that is Danish culture. And through drinking Stauning, you're also learning about Danish culture. So,
I can't tell you how much I love that story. Because this whole reason why we're here today, okay? I mean, at the beginning, I told you, Eric and I needed to do something so that we wouldn't go crazy, when essentially when the lockdown started, okay? And we didn't realize what this would turn into because the format that we came up with enables us to get to know people like you in a much more intimate way than, you get to know somebody at a whiskey show. At a
mhm.
whiskey show, I mean, you know what those are like. You do them all the
Oh yeah.
time. You get
Mhm.
5 minutes with somebody, okay? If you're lucky. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 minutes, all right? And what you just expressed is exactly what Eric and I wanted to create when we were doing this. We wanted to find a way for us to keep our sanity during a time when the world looked like it was falling apart.
Hmm.
And it really has been wonderful for us how receptive people like you, on your side of the table have been to this, okay?
Oh yeah.
Because um, everybody wanted to participate because obviously, people weren't doing things in person. But
Hmm.
they were also just, they appreciated the interplay because as you've already noticed, I'm sure, we get some really geeky questions here,
I love it. Yeah.
and this is just great. So, I want to remind you that after we turn off the recording, we do adjourn to an after session. So please stay for that. And what I'd like to do right now is I'd like everybody, if you are so inclined, please pour yourself another dram. I am going back to the smoked because I've already finished the chaos. And I'd like everybody to please unmute. Everybody, please unmute. And please join me. Come on, everybody, unmute. I see too many people muted. Listen to me, unmute. I want everybody to please unmute and please join me in saying a very hearty cheers and thank you to Hannah Thomas from Stauning.
Cheers and thank you to
Thank you.
Hannah Thomas from Stauning.
Oh,
Thank
I
you,
love it.
guys.
I love it.
If I could
love
teach you
buddy.
one quick Danish word outside of hygge, how you say cheers in Danish is skål.
Skål.
Oh,
Goal.
Skål.
There you go.
Goal.
On that note, skål. Thank you so much, Hannah and Eric. Please turn off the recording.